Hello, and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Poseidon.
And I'm your co-host, James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions, the podcast in search for more palatable political ferment. Today is June 6th, 2018. This is Season 2, Episode 11. Today with us we have Michael Fulbright, who is running for the 64th District, the Tennessee House Representative.
Yeah,
Yes,
our
sir.
Tennessee, our General Assembly.
That's
I think
another
we
way of
call it the
putting it.
General
Okay,
Assembly.
very good.
Yep.
So, well, welcome to the show,
Well,
the
thank
program.
you. Glad to be here.
Cool. Glad having you. And this is a good moment for me because most of the candidates we've interviewed up to this point, I go to a lot of the Democratic Party meetings. I get a lot of left-leaning candidates. Some folks who were, I would say, true independent, but a lot of people who were just straight-up Democrats, liberals. This and that.
Yeah.
You're our first real right-leaning guy. So
All right.
thank you so much.
Well, good.
You're
Proud.
this is a proud moment for us as a show.
We've
Yeah.
actually been trying, and Mr. Fulbright saw, I believe, one of our episodes and contacted me, and I was just elated.
Yeah,
Thank
actually,
you.
I was listening to the podcast with AJ and then also with Colby, and actually during the cast was sent you a message.
Yep, it was excellent. I appreciated that.
Sure thing.
So we're glad to have you with us.
So we try to be, fair and balanced.
well, I mean,
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, obviously, my name is Michael Fulbright. I've lived here in Maury County for 21 years now. Moved here right after college, 97. Grew up in North Carolina and came here shortly after college. Kind of followed that James K. Polk migration from Central North Carolina on over to Maury County.
yeah.
Started working at Trinity Lutheran Church just over on Trotwood Avenue. Was there for about 8.5 years. Budget crisis budget took a downturn and had to find something else. Went to youth villages, worked with foster kids.
What were you doing for Trinity Lutheran?
For the church, I was a youth and family minister.
Okay.
So I focused a lot on education. That was my background. I have a bachelor's in education as well as a master's in education.
Excellent.
And have done a little bit of education all throughout my career.
Wow,
Little
that's
bit
cool.
of
Yeah,
everything.
I also work in education, so I appreciate the struggle. It's actually when I started working down here in Columbia in 2008. But enough about me. Please continue.
Well, worked with foster kids at youth villages for quite a while, and then the schedule just became a little more than I could handle. And did training for child care workers in Davidson County, and now sell children's books to schools and libraries all throughout Tennessee and Kentucky. So I've got to see a lot of the state and really recognize a lot of the beauty that Tennessee has to offer.
That's excellent, actually. It sounds kind of like living the dream a little bit.
It really is, and it's a fun job. I mean, it's low stress, and you get to meet people who want to see you, and librarians are usually a pretty good bunch.
Gotcha. And you're also currently a county commissioner, right?
That's been my side hobby now for 4 years. Been District
Side
4
hobby.
District 4 county commissioner, represent the area along Trotwood, between Trotwood and Williamsport Pike. Kind of stretches from the bypass back to the Maury County Park.
Yeah. Which includes my house. So.
Exactly. Proud to be your commissioner.
Thank
We're
you.
sitting in
Yeah.
District 4.
You are, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. So you've been doing that 4 years. What are your thoughts working on the commission? Because I know a couple of other commissioners, some of which I'm in the good graces, and some of which I'm not.
Well, with the commission, when I decided to run 4 years ago, both of our commissioners decided not to run. So there were going to be 2 open seats. And at that time, the county commission had a reputation of being very divided and very divisive, and they couldn't get anything done. I've gone back and listened to the old meetings, and it's unbearable to listen to.
It really is.
It really is. And so at that point, I said, you know what? I've got a background with dysfunctional families, and I've got a background with preschool kids. I think I've probably got the skill set to make a difference. So jumped into the race. We had a pretty good race. Was elected in 2014. And really, I am very proud of what we've done. I've been the chairman of the commission the last 2 years. During our 4 years, this group of commissioners has been able to get Central High School approved and built. We've redone the county's financial management system. We've done a lot of upgrades to the parks. We've maintained, been able to give our employees raises. We've just really got a lot of things done that previous commissions couldn't get done. So, not to brag, but I am going to brag.
No,
We've got a group of
Please do,
22
yeah.
people who disagree at times, but at the end of the day can walk out, shake hands, and know that we tried to find common ground to get things done.
Excellent.
That's good.
That's exactly what I was actually going to ask about. Is the things that you were proud of accomplishing so far.
Yeah, and that's the list. I mean, Central High School is definitely right up there. In fact, when we had our kickoff for our campaign, it was in Central High School in the lobby there, going into the gymnasium. That's just a crown of our county. And obviously, we've got a lot of other things to be done. The schools in Spring Hill, our unit schools need to be bolstered up a little bit.
That's actually really great, because I was going to say you were really bringing some jobs here too to build that up. Several of my friends work for Lee Company, for example,
okay,
and
good,
they
yeah.
all worked on that project. I mean, I remember months and months of them working on that project.
Yeah, we're really proud. That was one of the first things that we really were able to stick a feather in our hat, and now to drive by it and just see that there's really a very proud achievement.
Well, good deal. I guess, so you've done 4 years on the commission. You've been the commissioner, the head,
Chair of the county commission, yeah.
The commissioner of the commission. The chair of the commission for 2 years, and now you've decided to essentially step up, and go for, this higher office, this state level office. What's motivated you to do that?
Really, it's a lot of that same thinking of, there's an open seat, and I feel like I've got the skills and I've got the ability to be able to make a difference. I mean, we've been able to accomplish some great things here in Maury County. And I really feel like, I may not always be the smartest person in the room, but I at least know how to get the smartest people together to get things done. And I think at the state level, that's even more important, because you've got so many state entities to work with, whether it's TDOT or the Department of Education or Veterans Affairs or whoever it may be. You've got to have somebody who can build some bridges to be able to keep those lines of communication open. If you get somebody who wants to go up there and make a name for themselves, you're going to have a lot of doors shut in your face.
Yeah.
You have to have that ability to bring people together to get something done.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we've had plenty of divisiveness in our General Assembly as well. So, I mean, I can understand the desire to do kind of the same thing, going from what you did with the county commission to going to the state level and saying, hey, guys, can we get the important things done and then fight about the dumb stuff later?
Exactly. And I've had the opportunity just through different avenues to talk to all the representatives that surround us, Dawson, Lawrenceburg, and Tillis, and Marshall County, and the guys up in Williamson County, and we all have a lot of the same mindset. We all see things very similar. Curcio has been a huge support. I've really enjoyed talking to him and working with him. And I think if we can give Southern Middle Tennessee a united voice, people who can work together, people who can actually get things accomplished, we can really make some progress going forward.
That would be refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess there's a question that pops to my mind, like almost immediately with all this. I mean, the reason why this is a race now is essentially because Sheila Butt, who is our current representative here in the 64th, she decided not to run. Now, if she was running again, if she was incumbent, do you think you would be here today?
Honestly, I probably wouldn't, because I really have enjoyed my time on the county commission, and I feel like with another 4 years, I could have helped keep that ball rolling. I think that there's a lot of promising potential commissioners coming on, and a lot of the ones that are there currently are staying really do have a lot of skills that can continue to push us forward. So I know the commission will be fine without me, with or without me. This was just an opportunity. Like I said, I just knew that I had the skills that I wanted to put to use to be able to help Maury County, help Tennessee, and this was just the time.
Gotcha. Well,
couldn't pass it up.
So I guess this is what motivated you to actually make the step up then. And you're running, again, for the Republican nomination.
Correct. Yes.
Now, I guess this brings me to a question of my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you kind of are libertarian leaning. Why the Republican nomination?
Well, it's real simple when you look at it in those terms. There's two parties in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. There's a Tennessee Republican Party, Tennessee Democratic Party. There is no other recognized party in Tennessee. My roots have always been in the Republican Party. I've always voted Republican. I was on the Republican Executive Committee prior, and actually early on in my county commission. So I've always been a part of the Republican Party. I think a lot of Republicans deep at heart, when you line up the platform of other parties, like you mentioned the Libertarian Party as an example, to what the Republican Party puts in their platform, not always in practice, but in their platform, issues like limited government involvement, low taxes, personal opportunities for freedoms, all those things, that encompasses, and really quite frankly, it's not a Democrat, it's not a Republican, it's not a Libertarian thing. It's an American thing. That freedom, that wanting to be able to live your life without government intrusion is something that we all really strive for.
I mean, it's, kind of the point of the Bill of Rights.
Exactly.
For anyone paying attention.
Exactly.
I know that they're dying currently, but
Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
that's
the
what
funny
we
thing
have them.
It's like the liberal Democrat, which, and I'm getting so sick. Like I was even saying this yesterday. I was so sick of the identity politics behind all of it. But like the stuff you just said really doesn't sound bad. But like we haven't seen that, like really from either end. In terms of what we've been seeing in politics.
The easiest way to keep a group of people down is to divide them.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what we're seeing within our political discourse. If you can keep everybody divided and fighting against each other, you're not really going to have any progress.
Yeah,
you're going to keep things the same.
You're voter pandering with things like this wedding cake case that everyone's
Exactly.
up in arms about. You're just pandering for votes, and you're not talking about anything that actually matters to people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that
talking about-
happens.
We're talking about personal feelings,
and that's why we seek a more palatable political
Exactly.
ferment. That's the whole purpose of this.
And that's why I was actually interested to get over here to talk to you guys, because I feel like that's something that really needs to be brought out more, is that civil discourse, civil conversations about politics.
I appreciate you recognizing that. That's like,
thank you so much. I think he just endorsed us.
right? Like we're on this mission. This is why we do this.
Well, good. Keep it up.
Very good. So the primary is August 2nd, right?
August 2nd is the primary. Early voting starts July 13th.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, always get that done early.
Yeah, absolutely. I never go on election day. I always
Yeah.
try to get there
It's a
beforehand.
nightmare.
Although I think was it 2016 the presidential election? Was it? I'm sorry. I'm tangenting like horribly right now.
Yeah, but no, you did.
I
think
I called James on the way to the voting booth for the presidential election because I still didn't know what I was going to do.
Oh.
Because I think that is the one time I think I let it go down to the wire.
And I gave him the full libertarian pitch. It was like, do not vote for either
he
one of those people.
And he didn't tell me that Gary Johnson was pro voucher. But anyway, I have to. Mea culpas every time. Anyway, so. Again, Ari, the primary. What is going to distinguish you in the minds of voters from your opponent?
Whenever you're talking about partisan primaries, you're going to have two people or three people or however many that have very similar views on issues. And I'm without talking about anybody else or anybody else's views, I just look at myself, like I said earlier, as somebody who can really bring people together and get things done. I think my opponent and I have different approaches to be able to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
I think that our distinguishing features are how we do that. During my 4 years on the county commission, we've done a lot to bridge those gaps, to bring people together, to focus on common ground. I think other times in other settings, people in office, no matter what office it might be, have that mentality of it's my way or it's nobody's way, and nothing gets done. Walls are built, doors are shut. So I would say for myself, that would be my selling point, is that ability to reach across whatever threshold there may be.
Yeah.
To get things done and to accomplish something.
So you're saying essentially that compromise shouldn't be a dirty word. Like
It's not really compromise as much as it is finding a common ground. I mean, I can still hold firmly to my beliefs and not bend on those beliefs. But I would rather say, hey, you know what? This situation right here has 80% of what I believe in it, and I might not disagree with 20% of what you've put into it or what our agreement may be. But I would rather have 80% of something I like than 0% of what I like.
In the world of contracts, they tell you that a good negotiation will leave both parties unhappy.
Exactly.
No one goes home happy.
If everyone's mad, but everyone got a little bit of something,
as long as it's not what you want, it's what you can live with.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that's not a bending of principle. It's not a compromise as much as it is just that, like I said, finding that common ground.
I mean, I would disagree on the compromise end, but I think I'm splitting hairs there. I see it as a compromise, but compromise isn't really a dirty word.
Correct.
The question is, are you looking out for the interests of your constituents?
Exactly. And that's the other thing I really wanted to stress is I will be the voice of Maury County. It's not going to be Michael Fulbright up there doing this or doing that. It's going to be the representative of Maury County. And I know that, I'm in the Republican primary, but I also know that 100% of Maury County is not Republican.
It's true.
So being able to listen to everybody, take input from everybody. One of the things I've really tried to accomplish over the last several months in preparation for this is to talk with all the leaders of various areas in our county, the medical leaders, law enforcement, education, industry, business, whatever, commercial, tourism. And I told every one of them the same thing. I'm not an expert in this field or that field or this field. I need the input from whoever it may be. And I didn't go into any of those offices and ask, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? I just want somebody who knows what they're doing. I surrounded myself with people who I respect and who I feel like are leaders in their field. Republican, Democrat, I couldn't tell you who votes how, but I just want the best people around me.
In local politics, that really should not matter.
On the local level.
I mean, it really should never
matter. I completely agree, but now when
right.
we get into the state level, things start to get really heated and divided.
It does.
And money starts getting involved. Lots and lots of money.
Yeah.
I mean, you have influences out of Nashville, Memphis, Knoxville, and you have large pockets in rural communities where people have accrued wealth and push for their own agendas. And then you also have national lobbyists that want to push something too. Right. You're going to have to contend with a lot of backdoor dealing and a lot of shady things, and that I think that's where you start seeing the identity politics really coming into play, because money's being funneled into that message.
Right. And it does make a difference. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Yeah. The money is something that's necessary to run a successful campaign, but it's also, you've got to watch yourself. I mean, you can't be beholden to whoever writes the biggest check. Right. You do that, you're worthless.
There's I guess a number of candidates that we've interviewed at this point, and others that I've just spoken to, that they make a point of saying that they refuse to take money from certain special interests. Is there anything? Do you have a list of people you won't take money from, or is there anybody who supports your message you're okay with, or where are you with that?
Honestly, I haven't been reached out to by anyone who I would say I disagree with.
Okay.
Those groups, I think, pretty much know, either they've read my website, or they know my stance from the county commission, or just from any other things that I've had written about me or out in public. There's some groups that just know we don't need to bark up that tree.
Yeah.
If I had someone who was pushing an idea that I really was opposed to, or something that violated my personal beliefs, it'd be a no-brainer. I'd turn that money right back over.
What about something you were on the fence on?
On the fence, as far as the money goes, if I were on the fence with it, I probably wouldn't accept a donation, but I would like to talk to those groups. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm willing to hear out anybody's side on anything. Now, until I was able to say, yes, this is something I fully support, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking any kind of support from them. But, I'm willing to talk to anybody about anything.
Yeah, I mean, you should always be open to being convinced.
Right.
Give them a chance to give you the pitch, I suppose.
Fair enough. That was just a curiosity, because, like I said, so many candidates have made a point of being like, I want to take money from NRA, I want to take money from just various, out-of-state type interests who are looking to influence local elections.
Right. And I'll be honest, I haven't had a lot of PAC. I haven't had any PACs say, here, we'd like to give you a check.
Yeah.
That may come, and that's obviously part of the game.
A post-primary thing.
A lot of it will be post-primary, but even now, I've had groups that I've met with that said, we really like what you're doing, we really like to support you, but right now it's just like, way to go, let's see how things go.
Yeah.
And it's good to have those dialogues. I mean, you got to have people on your side, or else you're not going to get anything done.
Exactly, because money talks in this game, unfortunately.
Right. But I do pride myself. I'm not up for auction.
That's good.
So
that's kind of why we explore that end, because
I
can sit here and listen to somebody talk to me about why they're up for auction. Yeah. I can actually entertain that idea, because I get it. I understand that it is a race to be elected.
Well, and I've had people ask how my fundraising's going, or this, that, and another, and I say, well, really, we're doing well, and I think that's a sign of support from the community more than anything else. But I also say we're not in an auction. We're in an election. I'm not going to be able to purchase. Some people can.
Yeah, I get it.
On the Washington level, that
you see it all the time.
Much more common, but that's not my goal. My goal is just to get enough to get my name out there and do what I need to get my message across.
Good to hear. I guess at this point, probably not a bad idea to transition to sort of your platform and where you stand on certain issues. Is there anything you want to say generally, or is it okay if I just pick an issue and we can talk about it a little bit?
I'll let you pick an issue.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to start off with was the opioid epidemic, and what you see as what you would do if you made it to the state made it to Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously that's something that's just been a huge issue. I mean,
it touches so many people.
It does not going away.
It does, and I mean it's hitting our community harder than it ever has before. I think a lot of that can be traced back. I mean, so many people want to put it into a law enforcement category. We just need to lock more people up or shoot the drug dealers or those kind of things, and that's just ridiculous. What we need to do is start looking at it as a true mental health crisis, and to be able to provide more opportunities for mental health counseling, treatment.
You mean like substance abuse
issues? Even going back before it gets to that point, you're talking a lot of mental health issues that are, people who are prescribed prescription drugs and then become addicted.
Yes, I mean,
I
call that a substance abuse issue, but we're talking some form of rehabilitation.
Exactly, and not to just label people junkies or just this, that, or another.
Like throwing them in jail when they fail drug tests or on probation.
Exactly,
things like that.
You've got to look at people as individuals, not as just a public health crisis.
Yeah,
but I mean that's what it comes down to, is providing more access to mental health treatment.
Specifically, I would ask, there's been a big push the last few years in the legislature in the state to either legalize marijuana or to decriminalize it, or to at least get a medical marijuana system going in this state. Where do you kind of stand on that, especially given the idea of having libertarian leanings and this idea of freedoms, and American choices and your ability to make choices?
I think there comes a distinction between what is permissible and what the community is ready for. I think if we were just able to open up the floodgates and say, all right, starting on July 1st, every CVS and Walgreens can sell marijuana, you're probably going to have a lot more trouble than what you really anticipate. So I think it really needs to be more education, more study done in that area.
Okay.
As far as the permissibility, I fall down on the side of adults are adults. This country wasn't founded necessarily by politicians. It was founded on people who wanted to be free and live their lives.
Of course.
So I fall down more on that side in every issue. The question then would become, is our society, is our state ready for legalized marijuana?
I know we're ready for the tax dollars.
You're not going to hear anybody complain about that, and I think that we really would need to look at what's happened in Colorado specifically, since they were the first, and then in a lot of those other western states, to see, because you read the stories about, their jails have just been exploding with crimes and this and that and another. Is it true or is it not true?
It's not true. Actually, you can fact check that pretty easily.
That's one of the things I really admired about the podcast of you guys that I've listened to, is the fact checking. You've got to see what's real and what's not real. How much of this is rumor? How much of this is just scare tactics?
Yeah, people post things on the internet all the time. But
yes, exactly.
The one thing I would say negatively against marijuana that I've seen, and I've fact-checked myself, is that you have had an increase in, I guess you would call it drugged driving or DUI.
Right.
You've had an increase of people being stoned and driving.
Right.
I mean, and there's no real effective way to test for it like you can for alcohol with DUI, where, you can tell how drunk somebody is based on a blood test the moment you collect the blood. Right. You can't do that with marijuana.
Is there like a field sobriety equivalent for?
There is a little bit. You have the vertical gaze nystagmus test, but
because outside of that, because you can test positive for it for a couple of weeks out. I've never done it myself.
But you could theoretically, there's ideas with like mouth swabs now. But even still, then that could be a few days.
Right.
You don't know if somebody's stoned or not.
Right.
And that's a little problematic. But to me, if you look at all of the good that's come from it, it's way outweighing.
Well, and
if we're going to use that metric, why is alcohol still legal?
Exactly.
what good does alcohol do for us?
Well, it's what society's
aside from being fun.
So I guess if we can maybe bring this to a point, essentially. Would you be interested in forwarding a bill for legalization of a system, or is that just something you're not ready? You think Tennessee's ready to touch right now? If that's in line with your personal values.
More specifically, there are levels to it, such as
Right.
decriminalization,
Right.
full legalization recreationally, or medical based on a certain number of criteria.
Right, and that's where I would really like to see a lot of the research being done. I think a lot of the medical issues, I think that's generally accepted that that's a very untapped resource for medical treatment.
It is. Well, especially for veterans with PTSD,
Exactly.
things of that nature. I mean, and we inch
I've seen
closer.
the effects in like seizure disorders,
Yes,
and things like that,
CBD oil doing all the things, but we have legalized
which is
CBD
like
oil
non-narcotic.
here. It
stuff,
is
right?
non-narcotic.
Right.
That's correct. But every year we step closer with Tennessee.
Right.
But I agree with you when you were saying, let's look at Colorado and the early adopters and see what happened there. Personally, I'm for full recreational legalization. I see no reason adults can't make decisions for themselves.
Well,
Set the age at 25 and let them do what they want to do.
And to answer your question, I fall in line right there. Let adults live their lives. Let people make their choices. But I'm not going to be the one. That's not going to be a banner that I go up there carrying. I'm not going to live.
Sure.
I'm not going to live and die on
Carrying
that
the,
hill.
the green banner.
Yeah, no.
I fully understand.
Not going up there with that.
So you don't need to worry about Normal sending you money or anything.
I have not been contacted by him. I can say that for sure.
That's funny. So I guess this is almost presumptive, but like with regards to other kinds of narcotics, you wouldn't be pro. Would you be pro sort of decriminalization, like more like the mental health aspect, like because I'm talking about like other hard drugs, that some people get into. We're talking about methamphetamines.
Probably not decriminalizing meth and coke and crack and all that.
Yeah,
but
Because
I also think that treating it simply as a criminal problem is not effective. We have to look at the underlying causes of a lot of these things, and that gets into the mental health issues as much as anything.
Substance abuse counseling,
Right.
rehabilitation. Like I harped on this, I think, with our interview with Ms. Block on DC4 in Nashville and the drug court programs. Because we do not currently have a drug court program in this area, but drug courts are great in the sense that you get held responsible, but you also are provided services that focus on your recovery and not just being on probation and having to pass drug tests. It's much more than that.
Well, and I can't, like I mentioned earlier, I worked with youth villages for quite a while, and we had kids that were a lot of times at risk of going into state custody simply because of their parents' drug abuse issues.
Yeah.
That was probably much more common
when
than
I was
not.
prosecuting, especially in Giles County. That was a huge thing when I was running juvenile court in Giles and Lawrence. Is a lot of these kids weren't bad kids. They just didn't have any parental supervision because their parents were also being prosecuted by me later on in adult court.
It's a pretty funky cycle.
So it's definitely a systemic problem. It's not just a criminal legal system problem. There's so many other things that touch into that
have to be addressed.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And really, just one of the reasons I brought that up is because there are some within the libertarian camp that are sort of, I guess you would say, doctrinaire, who are like, adults
All
do whatever
drugs.
you want, all drugs legal, Like, and so I just want some nuance. That's all.
Yeah, I was going to say the other end of that is that all drugs legal, but the criminal penalties for harming others while on the drugs, like stealing from them, violently hurting them, things like that, go through the roof.
Right.
You're looking at 20 years for stealing because you're high and trying to feed your addiction instead of, whatever the regular burglary charges are.
Gotcha.
Right. It's kind of a personal responsibility thing.
Gotcha. And we won't go any further.
I was going to say, let's say.
We do this all the time. We get right on the cusp of like, we're about to have a big debate. Draw it back. We're here for you. We're here for you today. So, healthcare. Moving on. What are your thoughts on the state of healthcare in the state? What would you like to see change? How would you change it?
I think opening healthcare up to more of the free market would be helpful. The less government intrusion you have into it and interference you have in it, I think you're going to have much more of a competitive marketplace. Now, I think with that, though, you have to be very aware that the rural communities are going to suffer. So I think we can't just go through like some people suggest and just start slashing. No, you can't raise this. You can't have this kind of this kind of expansion or that kind of expansion. You have to really be targeted in how you do that because you can't leave the rural hospitals out. Because you're going to have a whole segment of Tennessee outside of Nashville, Chattanooga, and Memphis that are not going to have health care if you don't do something to help stabilize the.
It's my understanding this process has already sort of begun when we did not take the Medicaid expansion.
And that's where I was going to ask too.
Yeah.
When you said the word expansion specifically, how do you feel about the Medicaid expansion in general?
Just as a general rule, the way it was presented, I would, like I said, I'm going to be leaning more towards getting the government out of and let the free market take over. But we still have to be able to do something, whether it's some sort of safety net or whether it's some sort of
I mean,
whatever.
in all fairness, Tennessee does carry a large surplus. We have managed our money well.
Exactly.
So if you're going to do away with the Medicaid expansion and the free federal money they're trying to hand us,
exactly,
I think you still owe the duty to our people to provide them with these services.
Exactly, and that's where I'm. And I'm not coming in this as a hospital administrator.
No,
and I'm still taking that input because I've talked to several people who are in that position, and they've given me various opinions. But I do think that no matter what happens, we have to eliminate the reduction of services that's taking place in the rural communities. Whether that's increasing, doing some sort of expansions, whether it's doing whatever form that may take, we can't leave those folks out because that's eventually going to eat into Maury County if it does, because it's hitting Perry County and just because it's hitting Coffee County or whatever, the more
Lawrence County suffered badly with the Crockett and everything too.
Exactly.
I saw that just while I was prosecuting down there. I mean, just tangentially. I mean, that service just fell apart.
Yeah, it's one thing
and that hospital had been struggling for a while.
But now it's gone into some kind of private market or some. I'm not an expert on this either, but they've connected with somebody or done something, and it has limited the services completely.
It seems right now in a lot of rural areas that the bottom is dropping out.
It is,
and I mean, how are you going to address that?
Well, I don't have a medical plan per se.
Sure,
I have my kind of filters that I see things through. One thing I would say, though, is you can't get so wrapped up in a political philosophy or a political ideology that you let people fall through the cracks and suffer. There's got to be a balance. You can't just look at everything and say, well, this had Obama's name on it, so it's got to be bad. We can't do anything like that. Or you can't look at it and say, well, President Trump said it, so we got to do it. It's got to be great. Either of those options are gonna leave you in a bad mess. You have to be able to, like I said earlier, look for that common ground. Just because one person said it or another person said it doesn't make it right or wrong. But you can find that common ground to be able to actually take care of the people who need it. How that's going to happen, I mean, I know there's a lot of folks in the General Assembly right now that are physicians and are from the medical field. And I think those are the people I would like to rely on. Obviously, looking that through my filters of limited government and personal choice and freedom, but yet also looking at the day-to-day reality of what people have to deal with. Not leaving other people out just because of my political ideology or slant. So that's a very convoluted answer to a question.
Well, it's not an easy question, and I don't think hard questions should have simple answers. So.
Right.
No, I appreciate that. I mean that sounds like a much more robust answer actually than most people will give.
Well, and I mean, I guess I wish I could come in and say, here's my 10-point plan to solve health care in Tennessee.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I think anybody that would come in here with that would be blowing smoke.
I was going to say, if I had a 10-point plan on how to fix healthcare in Tennessee, I'd probably be running for the same position.
I'd vote for you if you did.
Very good. And I guess there's a really interesting thing that you brought up when you were saying that, and I think it kind of touches on a larger issue, talking about not letting your ideology make determinations. That there is a thought that occurred to me is that you should never subordinate your sense of decency or your reason to your political leanings or your ideology.
Right.
And as long as that's something that you can champion, I'm willing to continue listening. Basically, even if you're not normally in my camp. You know what I mean? So I appreciate that.
Well, and this is one. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I've told her because she watches the news with me all the time and disagrees with me about several things. And I've always told her, I said, you can disagree with me about anything in the world. I said, just make sure you've got a good reason to back up your disagreement. I said,
yes,
that's fine. That's all I ever ask is a thoughtful answer. And that any conversation I have, my kids or peers or whoever, disagree with me all you want. Just have a good reason for it.
That's good.
I mean, that's basically all we ask here at Fermenting Opinions. Is
that's all anybody wants.
Tell
quite
us
frankly.
why.
Yeah.
Answer why. Give us reasons.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I guess we can move on at this point to jobs. You have part of your platforms to talk about jobs. I think one of the issues we're seeing right now is that, not necessarily an issue, but like unemployment is at a low. That we've been doing really good as a nation and pretty well as a state in terms of unemployment. Now, we haven't seen a whole lot of wages going up, really anywhere, but also in the state in particular. What is your plan to see wages come up?
Well, I think you're going to actually see that take place more, that unemployment is so low, because employers are going to have to offer more to get employees to come to work, to win employees over. Because if I've only got 2 people and I've got 5 jobs, I don't know if that math works out right, but anyway, you get my point. You have to make the job.
I think you just described education.
Yeah, that's that North Carolina education.
The market. I think what you're saying is once the market is competitive, you have an issue of some people will offer better incentives than others.
That's exactly what I'm trying to get across. Is if I have an employee that can take their view of 6 other job opportunities because unemployment is so low, then I have to do what I can to keep them. And a lot of times that's going to be either increased health care, increased salary, whatever other benefits may come about. So I think that's going to partially solve that. Then you're going to just continue to get more companies moving in. Hopefully you're going to get those higher wages. We're working on that in Maury County. There's a lot of tracking that our industrial development group does as far as not only the number of job increases that we've had, but they do try to track the best they can the average salary of the new jobs that have come in. That has steadily increased, obviously not to a level that everybody would like, but that is steadily increasing. I think that's an important thing to track at the state level as well.
Gotcha. And I guess another thing that occurred to me, other sort of reports and things I've been reading lately about the rate of economic growth of areas that are mostly in Tennessee. That's hitting sort of the big cities: Nashville, Knoxville, Clarksville, Memphis. But a lot of the rural areas are being left behind. Is there anything that is part of your platform that you have that would sort of help them catch up?
As far as actually education. That's what a lot of it comes down to. Even in the rural communities, if you can have a well-educated workforce, you're going to not be quite as left out of that discussion. I think the stereotype or the assumption is that if you have a large area, large community, you're going to have better education pool to draw from. It's not always the case. I think in Maury County, when we've seen that we've stepped up our education game over the last years, we've seen that resulting business development. So I think those two things tie together. Everything comes down to education in some form or fashion. So the job growth, and then, like I said earlier, that's going to affect the wage growth as well. So being able to provide a climate to where rural communities can tap into more educational opportunities, can have more visibility on the world stage, to have some of those companies take a look at them, either through their own economic development or through state-assisted economic development opportunities. I think the state has to be aware of what's happening in each of the communities. And quite frankly, that's why they need to elect representatives who can speak out on their behalf. And I think that's what I want to do for Maury County, is to make sure we don't get left out. Will and his group over at the Maury Alliance has done a phenomenal job of making sure people know who we are and making sure our name is out there everywhere. And as a representative from Maury County, we have to do that at the state level as well. That's just another avenue to get our name out there and to be beating that drum to say, we're Maury County, and doggone it, everybody ought to come down here and take a look at us, because we're worth seeing.
Very good. Now,
very well said.
I guess on the topic of education, because you brought it up, and because this is sort of goes back to sort of the beginning, and my snide comments towards James about Gary Johnson and being pro-voucher. Are you pro-voucher?
I am pro-voucher as long as it's not going to start to drain our public education system. I think there's ways to balance that. And I think so many times, like I said earlier, you get locked into a political ideology at the expense of something else. And you can find that common ground. I wouldn't say necessarily voucher straight across the board, here's your voucher, go do with it what you want. But I do think we have to increase school choices for our families. Whether that's in the form of an education savings account, which is starting to take root, whether it's in the form of a voucher, I don't think we have to drain our public schools to be able to make those choices happen.
Okay, James is just looking at
I'm waiting for the follow-up because I know something's coming.
the follow-up, and I guess full disclosure, I should have shared with you that I'm actually a board member with the Nashville chapter of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, being staunchly anti-voucher.
Okay, well, I'm gonna leave the lemon test out of this for a minute.
No, it's not a lemon test thing. I mean, I think it should be.
Yeah,
because most of the time vouchers go to religious schools.
They do.
But whether or not we're just talking about the nuts and bolts of improving educational outcomes.
My question is, how do you not drain public school funds to give money to families to send their children to religious schools with public school money? Again, I want to keep the religious aspect out of it, but where's the extra money coming from?
And that's where you got to really be able to navigate and to really massage the budget to make that happen. I mean, you've got to look at the state budget as a whole to be able to make those shifts that you need. It's not. It's going to be much easier for me to sit here around the table and talk to you about it than it is to put it into practice.
Of course,
I recognize that straight up. I think you really have to look at how much of an increase of funds that's really going to take. Because I've talked to a lot of the private schools that surround us, and they've all said, we can't just take in 150 or 200 kids from the public school. We're not going to get that many. So you are going to have some sort of decrease from the public school system, but not really enough to offset that cost as much. So you do have to look at how that balance takes place. I mean, you're not going to be able to take every kid out of a public school and put them in a private school state funded. That's just
obviously
not going to happen.
Also, I mean, you'd be killing jobs for all kinds of teachers and everything else. I mean, you're negatively impacting people's lives when you do that. Exactly. And I think you do have to look just how that affects each other more than anything else. How is that voucher program going to affect the state? I would be in favor of it as long as it doesn't compromise the quality of the public school system. I think you have to be able to look at it, and like I said earlier, find that common ground. It may work. You may be able to take half the public school money, put it into private schools, but that would not be beneficial for our state. We can't just look at one segment over another. We have to look to see what's going to be best overall.
Because that impacts, because what happens to public school students is that you have fewer students enrolled in public schools, and therefore they reduce the budget. And
I would like to see the number of that because, like I said, I'm would just like to see that data. Not that I'm questioning it.
No.
I just don't have it in front of me.
We're talking basic economics and, and again, if we're going to go back to job growth and job sustainability, if you're putting all of this money into private schools and they're now going to be a bigger thing, you're going to have teachers who are the better teachers competing now for these private school jobs and leaving the public school sector to the mercy of the lesser teachers.
Public school, Tennessee teachers is already a crisis.
Yeah.
Metro Nashville, I think, as of earlier this year, was already short 400 teachers.
And again, when you start changing the job market, you're going to have a more competitive market with private schools that can manage their money differently and are not beholden to federal government money, but then get free handouts with these vouchers. They have a guaranteed income for all of these kids, and you're really affecting the quality of your public school education.
And I think some of that too is you don't necessarily, because obviously you can find the statistics on how much it costs to educate a student in Maury County.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that is the amount that you just take out of the budget and transfer it over here.
Exactly.
So that's where you can have some of this working of the budget to have one increase, but not necessarily at the expense and suffering of another. It's not a perfect solution. Like I said earlier, kind of the comparison with legalized marijuana, you have to do these things in smaller increments.
Yeah.
You can't just go in there and slash and say, all right, now everybody who wants a voucher can have one. Otherwise, you're going to have chaos, and you are going to wreck the education system.
Yeah, if I've got a choice, I'm going to work for the private school that pays me more, because they're collecting money from the federal government simply for tuition.
Well, now, and I will say this too,
and that's been an issue too.
It is an issue. It's a huge issue.
Well, and with that, and like you just said, though, some of those schools, those private, especially the Christian or the religious schools, are not necessarily going to want to tap into those because of the stipulations that come with those with that federal or state money.
Title IX. If you wanted to make them beholden to
sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. I mean, some of those are going to be.
Well, that's why it becomes a church-state separation.
Right, exactly. That's where the lemon test is going to come in.
Right. We've got public dollars going to a private school who will maybe not allow a student to enroll if they're homosexual or something like that.
Right.
We're allowing for those kinds of abuses to take place. And that's for established schools. That's for established, particularly like Catholic schools. They take a lot of voucher money throughout the country. If anything in this, I would implore you to do more research and look at what the educational outcomes are in areas where they do have voucher programs, because the data is already there. And at best, they break even. Right. In many cases, the educational outcomes are worse, and that money gets evaporated into private schools and the fly-by-night charters that they get cropped up. I'm sorry, this is an issue. That's
I understand that, and I think the thing that I would want to stress is necessarily the voucher program kind of has its own connotations that come with it. I think there are other ways that we could explore to provide increased choices for families. Not necessarily a voucher. Here's your piece of paper with your money. But just other opportunities. And I think that's where the research, that's where listening to the different groups is going to come in. I mean, because I have had many good conversations with our local teachers union, and I found their input to be very valuable. Many other organizations across the state that are more school choice oriented, I appreciate their input as well. So it really does become everybody wants what's best for the children in whatever form or fashion that takes. So being able to start there and say, how do we make that happen? Vouchers, that's some forms are good, some forms are bad. I mean, you're not going to win with everything, but it's got to be something that doesn't sacrifice the quality for the larger population of our state. That's what it all comes down to. Well,
I appreciate that. As someone, this is why we ferment. We kind of turn it into a catchphrase. We're not necessarily going to see eye to eye necessarily on everything. Right. I appreciate the fact that you're keeping an open mind about it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And that's the thing. I'm not going in there with an agenda. I'm not going to go in leading the charge of let's shut down all the public schools. That's that's ridiculous. But
yeah, I mean that's kind of what we're seeing on a national level right now.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
Betsy DeVos, and I suck air through my teeth.
I mean, we can't wreck what we have just to make a political statement.
I mean, yeah, there's going to be collateral damage if you do that. Right. And the collateral damage is children's education.
Exactly, and the future of our country.
Exactly.
I mean, that's all it comes down to.
Gotcha. Another issue to move on from that. Another issue that was part of your platform. We were talking about sort of bringing up economic growth in rural areas. Was the issue of broadband availability. Mm-hmm. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
I think that just goes into the infrastructure piece more than anything else. I think that gets into how can we, because we're sending a lot of tax money up to Nashville, through our sales tax and through other taxes that we contribute. How do we get more of that money to come back down, whether it's in the form of highway expansion, widening bridges, broadband, whatever? How do we get more of that to come back down? And so those are all kind of lumped together in my mind. It's all that infrastructure that we need to sustain the growth that we're having. And that's where we have to have somebody who can advocate and build those connections between the different agencies. As far as just the state writing a check and say, here, you can all go get internet now, it's not realistic. But we have to be able to do things like equip our schools with what they need. Because a lot of those schools, especially out in the rural areas of Maury County, are the hubs of the community. So if we can start there, and that does get into school funding and infrastructure growth in those areas.
I mean, we've seen the state legislature and the governor's office kind of make pushes to increase broadband accessibility in larger cities. But again, I think the rural issue is what's going to come up. I mean, what was it, Chattanooga that got Google Fiber all throughout the city, and everybody's got 100 gigs or whatever a second of. Then that's great. And that's good for building a hub to spread out to rural areas, but we really need to find a way to channel that. I don't know if you can do that through tax incentives with companies like Google or any of these ISPs like Charter or Infinity or
because that's sort of the problem. Part of the problem with economic growth in those rural areas is they don't have broadband.
Exactly.
If they don't have internet access, other than
I'm not going to
satellite or dial-up or something like that, businesses are not going to be attracted to those areas at all. So, yeah. So, I don't know where you want to go from there.
I don't know. Actually, you really had this nailed. Normally we've got some rambling and everything going on.
Well, no, believe me, I can ramble all we need to, but and that's, I guess I really want to stress that a lot of these things are my opinions, but I'm not going up there with this agenda or that agenda in mind. I really want to be the voice of Maury County. So I'm a representative who just wants to go and be that voice. Mm-hmm. I'm not going up there to try to get my name in the paper or get on TV or
if you could do us a favor, if you do get elected,
not end up on late night talk shows.
Yes, if you could not be the butt of jokes across the nation, that'd be great.
That's my goal.
Was that a pun, James?
I was going to let that one slide, but
it's okay. We can do it.
Yeah, and yes, that was a pun.
Yeah.
I'm actually really proud of that pun. Thank you for calling that one out.
Very good job. I guess, and you've, from other interviews that we've done that you've listened to, it's something that I tend to bring up towards the end of the conversation, is you were talking about fact checking and facts being important, and we live in in an age where we're informed and disinformed sort of simultaneously, and it's really hard to determine fact from fiction anymore, or fact from spin. And pursuant to that, one of the guys that we interviewed, one of our earlier interviews, was a guy named Dr. Gleb Sapersky, who is the founder of something called the Pro-Truth Pledge. He's been on the news and in various publications. And really what that comes down to is what we're asking you to do is to sign on to the Pro-Truth Pledge. And you get to sort of be sort of counted amongst candidates, elected officials, what have you, of sort of a database of people who actually care about what they're saying is true or not. And that's motivated a lot of people. When we had A.J. Holmes, a potential future Democratic opponent, he said that was one of the things that motivated him to run, is he was seeing a lot of untruth being propagated by elected officials. And so that's why we try to ask anybody who's running for office is, will you take the pledge? And all it says is that I care about being factual, and I care about what I'm saying is being true. And call me on it if I'm wrong. I'll correct myself.
I won't allege facts I don't know to be true.
Right.
I'll look at things and figure it out.
And you've been very good about that during this interview itself.
Well, I appreciate that. And I have heard you guys talk about that in the past, so I did do a little looking up on that, and I would like to read a little bit more about it before I put my name on anything.
Sure.
But I will say this. I think we really do run the risk of getting into pandering to certain voting blocks. We can just say whatever we want. I mean, I could walk in here right now and say, you know what? First day I'm in the General Assembly, I'm going to outlaw abortion. I'm going to raise everybody's taxes 75%, and I'm going to fund everybody's internet going forward. I can make all the claims in the world that I want, and that'll probably be a soundbite later on, I guess, if somebody wants to take it out of context.
I'm gonna look at the timestamp right now. That was at 52:20. You're done.
But the point is, I can say whatever I want at this point. Whether or not it's true is irrelevant to some people. I can pander. I can throw whatever out there.
And as long as you say something that makes them feel good.
That's all the uninformed voter really wants. Just who's going to make me feel good? Who do I think is going to be a good job? And who do I want to see on TV for the next 2 or 4 years? And it's sad that we vote, and it's sad that we elect people of that in that manner. And I think you guys really hit it on the head when you're talking about holding people accountable for what's true and what's not. I think that is the thing that we've lost. And I was really glad to hear AJ talk about that on you guys' show, because, and he told me that later on separately when I was talking to him, the fact that when people aren't living up to our standards, when we don't feel like we've elected the best among us to lead us, that's when we have to step in and do it.
Yeah.
We can stand around and complain about what doesn't get done, what should be done, how we would like it to be done, but if we're not willing to jump in there and do it, we can just stand around and talk about it for another 5 years.
Well, I mean, when you do that, that's how you end up with Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton as the two front runners for the candidacy for the president of the United States. I mean, how did we get in this timeline?
Oh,
what
yeah.
did we do?
I mean, you had the two least popular people, I dare say, in the country.
Yeah. I mean,
running to be. in a perfect world, and I always have joked about this, I would really like to get to the point where we, instead of just checking a box, we actually had to write an essay on why we liked this person we were voting for president.
That smells like a voting test. Those are unconstitutional.
No, but I think you get my point. Like I said earlier, we can disagree, but you have to be able to tell me why. If you want to vote for this person or that person, just explain to me why. I don't want to hear, well, my mama was a Democrat, my daddy was a Republican, whatever. That's why I'm voting for this person. That's just the laziest way we can elect people.
Oh, yeah. I vote Democrat because I'm a Democrat, or I vote Republican because I'm a Republican, is probably one of the most ignorant things you can hear.
I heard someone tell me, and this is me tagging my own quote unquote team, but I heard someone say recently that they were born a Democrat, and that's just who they were like their whole life, and it is this unquestioning, unreasoning loyalty. That's
right.
Which is funny because we're gonna be doing an episode hopefully by the end of the month talking about tribalism, and I think the whole Trump effect and the whole fallout of 2016 is very much a product of that.
A friend of mine actually said the statement, "Vote blue no matter who," and I was just like, just complete facepalm. Right. I'm just like, are you serious right now?
And that's to go back to the pro-truth pledge. That's part of it, and it's actually one of the hardest things is when it's people who, from your own quote unquote tribe or team are saying things that are not true or have not been verified as true. You kind of have to stand up and say, well, no, we don't know that's true, or no, we know that's false.
Right.
And you have to be willing to sort of take that on the chin because you're going to get blowback.
Well, now I can tell you,
disloyal.
I mean, my throughout my whole career, I've really held to the principle of I'm not going to say this is true or that's true unless I can actually back it up. I mean, from a legal perspective, from an educational perspective,
prove it.
You have to have that proof before you assert something.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that should be just common knowledge, but it's not.
Yeah.
So, I definitely fall into that camp. I'm not going to be just espousing just made-up facts just because, it's a Republican thing to do, or this is an issue that's Republicans are
I would like for that to not be a Republican thing to do.
I would like it for it not to be a Democrat thing.
Well, no, and I mean, just because this thing or that thing is a topic that I want to assert, I'm not just going to start throwing numbers out that I have no clue about. Yeah. It makes me look like a fool. I mean, and I wouldn't want that. Try to limit that as much as possible.
Yeah.
I appreciate that approach.
Yeah, and it sounds like, you've already sort of got the attitude. If you want to investigate more about pro-truth before you sign on, that's you doing your due diligence, and I appreciate and respect that as well. Is there anything that you want to say in closing here? Where can we find you?
You can find me. I am on Facebook. I can't remember the exact tag, but look my name up, and it's representative for the 64th District. Something along those lines. I'm on Facebook. You can find me. It's not
His name's Michael Fulbright. He's on Facebook.
Yeah, Michael Fulbright. MichaelFulbright.com is my website. That's where the campaign information is. I think I'm on Instagram. Somebody told me, but I don't do Instagram, so I don't know.
I like this guy more and more.
But Facebook is probably where I'm the most active.
It's for the young people. Instagram.
Yeah, it's those young kids anymore.
Tweets and all that.
Yeah. That is the other thing. I am not on Twitter. So as far as politics go, I keep my political views off of Twitter.
That's refreshing.
Yeah, I actually had somebody the very first night I decided I was going to run and went out and talked to them, and it was somebody who I really respect their political leanings. They said, first question I got to ask you is you don't put a bunch of stupid stuff on Twitter, do you? And I said, no, sir, I don't.
We're gonna have to talk after we go off air.
Yeah, there's a whole
there's some people who are on social media who should stay off of social media.
I definitely
people that we both know.
Yeah,
but I'll leave it at that, so that way you don't have to say anything negative.
But yeah, Facebook is probably the most effective way to find me. My name's obviously I have my own personal profile and it's linked to the campaign profile. So
and a quick reminder again, when does early voting start in the area?
Early voting starts July 13th. The primary for the Republican Party and, all parties is August 2nd, which is the first Thursday of August, and then the general election is in November.
Yeah, well, we're one step at a time. I think you're worried about the August 2nd first.
I definitely,
August
guys, 2nd is
go out and vote for the love of God. If you're complaining about politics or you're listening to this, you obviously have some interest in politics. Please vote.
Absolutely. Everyone go out
in
and vote.
primaries.
Go out and inform yourself and vote.
Vote in primaries,
definitely.
Vote in generals, vote everywhere.
Yes.
Definitely. You can't complain if you don't vote.
That's right.
Absolutely. And for us, we're Fermenting Opinions. You can find us on the web at fermentingopinions.com. We have our YouTube channel where we're currently streaming this by the same name, Fermenting Opinions. We have a public page as well as a private discussion group. If you want to, share some of your more vitriolic partisan ideas, you can do so from the safety of a private group, both by the name of Fermenting Opinions, and you can also check us out on iTunes, Beyond Pod, and other places where you can get your podcast listening on. And all that said, I'm David Papiden.
I'm James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions, and we'll see you next time.